Hi and welcome to your session about learning contracts and how they affect you as a PPE. First of all, to start off with, what is a learning contract? So a learning contract is a document produced by the Disability Student Support Team based here at Sheffield Hallam. It recommends what reasonable adjustments should be made to meet the entitlements of a disabled student. So what's in it? So each student has their own individually agreed learning contract, and within this contract they set out recommendations to ensure that they aren't disadvantaged on their course, and these might relate to things around their learning, around teaching, assessment, personal assistance, access and mobility. So there can be a range of things within that. We have learning contracts for students with dyslexia, we have learning contracts for students with mental health problems, we have learning contracts for students with mobility problems, back pain, a whole range of different disabilities. And what's important is that they are both physical and mental health. So who makes the learning contract? Recommendations. These are made by specialist assistants and advisors within the disability specific expertise and the experience in the DSS team. So within the DSS team they'll have different people with different expertise. So I know, for instance, they've got somebody who's a specialist with people with hearing impairment. They've got people who are specialists with people with specific learning disabilities. So they have this sort of wealth of knowledge in the team for each student. And the team includes the Sheffield Regional Assessment Centre and a member of the National Network of Assessment Centres. So you've got that kind of objective view there as well. So how do we decide the recommendations? So the recommendations are made in accordance with the student's disability, in line with practices of other UK universities, and basic recommendations are made when we receive students' medical evidence. So learning contracts are only drawn up after the medical evidence has been produced, and they may after that make further recommendations based on the individual themselves. And we consider the impact of the student's learning, disability on their learning and their studies and their strategies for the course requirements. So does the student have to share the learning contract or disclose their disability? Well, no, they don't. We do encourage positive disclosure though, but it is their choice. But we firmly believe that to build an open and honest relationship, that starts with communication. So we really do encourage them with positive disclosure, because if you don't know, then you can't sort of support, you can't empathise. So we do really encourage that, and most students do disclose and share that with their PPE. So what's the difference from having a student without a learning contract? So every student with a learning contract will have a pre-placement meeting with their visiting tutor. So we'll sit down with the student, and in this meeting we draw up something called a pre-placement agreement. So that's based on a discussion around their learning contract, and that placement specifically thinking about potentially what difficulties might arise and coming up with solutions for that. So this is an example of a PPA. So this was a student with dyspraxia who was going into wheelchair services. So one of her main anxieties was things around checking wheelchairs. So she felt dyspraxia would be quite difficult for this, so she wanted to have observed practice. She did say that she was going to disclose about, or she'd already disclosed actually, because she'd already rang them up. She wanted her work to be checked, and she'd always want to seek advice and support when she feels she needs it. So the other thing she was about was around anatomy. So we said about doing some pre-placement meeting, following procedures, again asked for allocated time, and worries about not being able to do the work. So advising always seek support from the educator, plan to do things that you find difficult early in the placement, so get them kind of worrying things out of the way. And acknowledge that wheelchair techs are only part of the patient pathway, and also about rating the confidence throughout the placement, and also to email me sort of weekly check-ins, and also obviously to have a supervision, and then you look at who it's involved. So this is a really nice way of sort of preempting some potential difficulties and coming up with solutions. So it's very solution focused and very empowering to the student, and the student then is encouraged to share the PPA with their educator prior to placement, and obviously this can feature as part of your supervision sessions as well. So when you're coming to the conference, within the session, you're going to actually get into Teams and draw up your own PPA, pre-placement agreement. And this is going to be based on a number of different case studies. Then once you've drawn up your pre-placement agreement, you're then going to share with the group. So you can sort of look at each other's potential recommendations that you've come up with and the potential difficulties and the solutions, and share that as a collective group. So I hope that's been useful for you, and I hope you enjoy the session.